everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra, the TBR0, and my goal is to lessen my physical TBR one book at a time. We are in the throes of TBRathon, a month-long readathon happening this month. If anyone's interested in joining or knowing more about it, I'm sure I have information in the description. Because we're in the midst of it, because everything's been chaotic, I've been on everybody's sprint and supporting everyone. People have been supporting me. It's been a huge, amazing time. However, it's also been a bit chaotic for me, and I really want to stick to my 2-week schedule as far as posting. So I thought that this could be the perfect time for me to squeeze in a very relaxed book tag, and it's all thanks to Danni over at Danni Dabbles. She tagged me at the end of 2023 with her own book tag. It is So What Did I Learn 2.0, and I'm really looking forward to it. There's only a handful of questions, and really the point of the book tag is to reflect upon your reading year and really look at what you learned about yourself, about your reading tastes, about your goals moving forward, just kind of taking the time to really think about those things. And I'm really looking forward to doing it. I only recall her own answers, and I've also seen Lotta over at Lotta's Nook do the same tag in the last week, and that's the only references I have. I haven't really looked at the questions themselves because I'm going to try and answer them on the fly, so we're gonna see how this goes. If you are interested by the end of this video in my own content, you want to see more of me beyond book tags, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel. You are also more than welcome to simply consider commenting or do the book tag yourself. I will have tagged a couple people, even though it is already the beginning of 2024. If someone needs a book tag idea, maybe they need a relaxing kind of posting week as well, I'm happy to be that person for you. So I will tag a few people here, but beyond that, feel free to just continue watching the video and enjoy. Okay, let's get to these questions. There are 6 in total. The first one is something you've learned you love. And it's quite general, so it could be something I love within a book, the narrative plotting, character development, the booktube community, really anything under the sun, which is quite nice and also quite daunting because of how general it is. I suppose that something that I've learned this year that I really enjoy is buddy reading. I have done quite a few buddy reads with the same people, with different people, and it's been a really great experience. I always enjoy reading a book that someone else has read, years ago, months ago, or having them do the same with me. But it's a completely different experience when you are reading it basically side by side with someone, at least digitally side by side with them, especially when you have it organized by chapters per day. I think that's something I've realized that I really, really enjoy, is when we're strict and saying, hey, read 5 chapters, let's chat while we're reading it, versus saying, hey, let's just read this book by the end of the month and then come back and talk about it. I feel like you miss the richness of being able to really dissect a plot, which is something I enjoy, as well as discussing theories. That is something that I think I have too much fun with. I come up with my own storyline, and sometimes it ends up being better, sometimes it ends up being worse than what the author actually came up with. And so yeah, I think for me, not only buddy reads, but the type of buddy read that is really strict as far as, hey, we're going to read this book in a week, we're going to read 50 pages a day, let's do it together. And that's also partially thanks to Danni, who is the creator of this tag. She and I think are on our 7th or 8th month of buddy reading a book every single month, and we usually finish the book by the 8th because we do that, and we send each other voice messages, sometimes every other chapter or every chapter depending on what we think about it. And I don't know, I think it's just made me get a lot more out of it than I ever would have suspected. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you're someone who has never really tried that type of a buddy read format. Ooh, the next one is a bit spicy as far as potentially bringing up some controversy. Question number 2 is something you've learned you hate. Ooh, oh gosh. What is something that I hate? I would say that I am becoming more and more sensitive to, this is gonna sound a bit weird, but I'm becoming more and more sensitive when I'm reading a modern book that has controversial, problematic, harmful content. that shouldn't be something that anyone's like, yeah, I love that. That's my favorite part of reading, is when I find that. But for me, it's the number of times I read a book that was maybe published 2015 or more recently 2023, and there is something that I'm just baffled by the fact that the author decided to write it in that way, that it got through their agent, that it got through an entire editorial team, the publisher. And so whenever I see that, I get really actually more and more angry. And this year in particular, I found that there were quite a few books that specifically showed fat phobia in various forms. So it could be extremely explicit or super subtle, where maybe the author didn't even realize that they were doing this. And oh my gosh, it's just becoming more and more visceral for me, where before I think I would just be frustrated and be like, oh, that's annoying. Whereas now that I'm seeing it, I have no tolerance. I actually have no tolerance for problematic content. So I don't know, but I hope that doesn't suggest that the old Leandra was totally fine with it. But I think I'm becoming more and more like aware of it too. I think that this year I've learned to see it. And that's another lesson I think a lot of us can kind of take in for a moment, is realizing that just because you didn't see it maybe, or you wouldn't have seen it 5 years ago, and obviously it still would have been there, that means you've grown as a person, that you have to train your mind to, for instance, see privilege when you have it, to see when another group that you don't identify with is being harmed by certain rhetoric or a certain scene, a character that we're meant to see as a hero, when in reality they have certain views that we shouldn't be okay with. It's a training process. It's not natural for us to be able to see it because of how many years we've been told the opposite, because culture's been telling us not to see those things. I hope that makes sense. Prompt number 3, something you've changed your mind about. Something I've changed my mind about. This is gonna sound strange as someone who is now hosting a month-long readathon, but it is slightly related to that. I never actually thought that I could get through or participate fully in a month-long competitive readathon. So you can kind of see how I'm not really talking about TBRathon, but this past year, for the first time, I dedicated myself to 2 competitive readathons that were month-long, and I made it through all the way to the end, partially because one of them I was a co-host, so I kind of I was in it for the long haul. But with the Amazing Readathon, that was the first time where I signed up and was like, okay, I'm doing this for 4 weeks, because there had been times probably in the last couple years where I'd sign up, and then I'd realize that I just either don't have the capacity to do it, or I wasn't really dedicated, I didn't really understand. And I think I'm just more invested in the booktube community now, so it's not as difficult for me to interweave these kinds of competitive prompts and activities within my daily life. And so yeah, I think I've changed my mind about being able to, or at least believing in myself, to participate in a month-long competitive readathon. Prompt number 4, something that has helped you pick better books. Maybe this was the worst idea for me to actually do these on the fly, because they're actually really contemplative and thoughtful prompts made by Danni. So that is my fault. Honestly, talking with other people who have read them, especially because I've expanded my friend base on booktube, which is honestly probably one of the things I cherish most about the year of 2023, making so many friends, expanding my community. And it's helped me pick better books because I know my friends' reading preferences, because we talk about books all the time, even if it's books that we aren't reading alike. So I can kind of see from maybe 5 to 10 reads that a friend has preferred or hated. And then depending on their reaction to a book, I'll be like, okay, is that book for me or is it not for me? And it can go both ways. If someone hated a book, I can be like, those elements actually wouldn't bother me, I'll probably love it. Or vice versa, someone adored this book for X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, ooh, those are things that I don't actually like. So, checking on Storygraph, on Goodreads, watching my friends' booktube content, getting recommendations from them too, and feeling confident that they know me as a reader. Oftentimes I feel like our friends actually know us better than we do, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'd like that. And someone says, no, Leandra, I know that you would adore it. And then I read it and I'm like, you're right. And so that's really helped me pick better books, talking about them with friends, getting recommendations that I trust from friends, and being like, okay, I feel comfortable adding this to my TBR. And yeah, that's been really helpful to me. In addition to just the lessening of stress as far as buying books, I am so comfortable now getting a book from Libby, from Hoopla, from my physical library, that it actually makes me more likely to give any book a chance, which I think means I enter a book with a more open mind than I might if I bought it and then I had to kind of decide, was it worth my money? Am I going to keep it on my shelves? If not, what am I going to do with it? And so that helps lessen the stress of it. So if a friend recommends a book and I'm like, oh, I don't know, it's a bit experimental for me as far as my tastes, if I can get it from the library, honestly, why not? And so it helps me kind of enter the book with a more appropriate kind of like less judgmental and analytical kind of mindset, if that makes sense. Oh shoot, let me do this again. Prompt number 5, something that has prevented your enjoyment of reading. Oh my goodness. At times, feeling the pressure of reading a book with a certain deadline, that can affect it. And I'm not talking about buddy reads where we read 5 chapters a day, as I've already talked about in this video, but I have noticed, especially with competitive readathons, that's a part of my strategy. I'm actually less likely to pick up a book that I would want to take my time with, that I think reading it too quickly would harm my appreciation of it. So usually with competitive readathons, I'll still get a few 5 stars in because I have fun reading, so it's not surprising. But I think that as far as like long-lasting memory, as far as the plot goes, that can kind of make it a bit more difficult. These books are in my like categorization in my mind are like short-term reads where I'm not going to remember them as thoroughly. I probably am going to speed through them. I might be immersive reading them or just listening to them on audio. And so if I'm feeling the deadline, I'm like, oh, a prompt is going to drop soon. I have had to speed up audiobooks to the point where I feel like I'm not really processing it as much as I probably would if I was physically reading it, immersive reading it, listening to it at a slower speed. And so I do think that happens where I allow the time crunch to kind of prioritize what I'm doing versus actually just being like, okay, am I enjoying this book? What am I doing? So yeah. And the final prompt for this is something that has improved your enjoyment of reading. So I'm thinking of an element that I didn't do or didn't have when I was a booktuber in 2022, for instance, and that is reading sprints. I never participated in reading sprints, even as like a commenter, as like an observer, let alone be on screen. I only started probably in the spring or the summer this year, so I've only been sprinting for maybe about 6 months or so, and I really enjoy it. Not just as a host of reading sprints, but I love being on other people's channels. I love being able to support them in the comments, in any way, shape, or form. It's really enhanced my enjoyment, especially because you feel as though you truly are even more so a part of a community where everyone is reading across the world. I think it was actually just this past Monday when I had someone over. She'd never sprinted before, and that was Abbie from Pink Beauty XX. I'll make sure to tag her below. She honestly just like reminded me of how fun it can be to introduce others to it, what I was like when I had never sprinted before. We had so many different people from different areas of the world commenting and joining in on our conversations. And yeah, I think it allows for you to interact with people immediately, versus these sit-down videos are also lovely, but I don't get to interact with like someone's comment as immediately on screen as I can during reading sprints, or show someone my immediate reaction to a book or see their immediate reaction to a book as they're reading. So it was a game changer for me as far as like just enjoying my reading, enjoying others reading as well. It's very weird to talk about, but if you're watching this and you've never participated in reading sprints in any form, I highly recommend you do, because it's very fun. You make friends too, which of course we love. All right, and that is So What Did I Learn 2.0, a book tag hosted by Danni over at Danni Dabbles. I really enjoyed kind of reflecting thinking back on, I think, the highlights as well as the lowlights of 2023. It'll be interesting to see if my answers change in the coming year, if I can do this tag again, if I can remember to do this tag again, and just kind of compare my answers side to side. If you are interested in doing this tag but you're not tagged below, then honestly just do it anyway. The prompts should all be linked below, as should Danni's own video if you want to see her answers, get a bit more inspiration. It's January now as I'm doing this, but you can certainly also even post in February. You might have an even better distance from the year of 2023 to really reflect, think about what you've brought with you, what you're leaving behind in 2023. I would love to see you do it, and if you can, tag me as well so I can watch and support your channel in the same way that you've supported mine. If you don't have a booktube but you also want to provide a few answers to the prompts below, then please comment. I would love to respond to you, show you that I'm engaging in your content in the same way that you've engaged in mine. I think that that's it. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me. If you are participating in TBRathon, I hope you're having fun. I would love to get any type of feedback or comments about it as well if you feel comfortable doing so. Beyond that though, I look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, bye everybody!